Welcome and welcome back. If you've been following along with us over the past 2 weeks, if you haven't, you can go back and watch our two previous live streams to get more information on the expedition and to see live dive footage of a never before seen dive. I am Holly Pettis, the deputy expedition leader for this expedition.
And I'm Marley Parker, the expedition photographer and videographer.
Over the past 2 weeks, we've been working in the newly designated Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary, and this has been a first of its kind expedition in its sanctuary. We've used the University of Rhode Island's brand new ROV Rhodey to document shipwrecks in order to construct some awesome 3D models, and my, has it been fun.
And during our program today, we are really excited to show you our epic shipwreck footage. We're also going to discuss everything we've accomplished during this expedition. It hasn't just been filming these shipwrecks. We've been doing quite a lot of other stuff. We'll also tell you about a few of the challenges we've encountered along the way and what our next steps will be.
Marley, we set out from Oswego, New York on May 18th with the hopes of documenting 14 shipwrecks within the sanctuary. And as of this morning, we actually have documented 12 shipwrecks so far, and we still have just about 2 days of operation time. So I think we're going to be able to reach our goal. But that's because Rhodey and our team have been working around the clock to collect these data.
I have been so amazed with this team. I think I told you that when we first looked at the expedition plan and I saw that it had 14 shipwrecks in 2 weeks, I thought there's no way we can do that. I've worked on a lot of ships. I've rarely worked with a team as tenacious as this one, just really getting after it every day. And that does involve 24/7 operations. So during the day, our ROV team is up early and getting the ROV into the water first thing. We often do multiple dives in one day. They close up shop in the evening, and then our mapping team comes online. And our mapping team has been imperative to making this operation as successful as it's been. They have identified many new, previously undiscovered wrecks within the sanctuary, and then we've been able to, pinpoint their locations and survey them. And the process of how we collect these data is really fascinating. And I think we have a little video clip we can take a look at.
Yeah.
This is kind of what we're going for on these dives. One thing historically in maritime archaeology that's taken a lot of time, and specifically time diving, bottom time, has been recording and mapping of sites in order to map an entire site with a high degree of precision. Since the last about decade and a half, increasingly powerful software has allowed us to develop, using photography, very detailed three-dimensional models of wrecks that have a level of accuracy that's far beyond what you could do with measurements, just manually and at a far more efficient time scale. We use these not only to assess the condition of a site, to map a site and understand it archaeologically, but also there are other tools you can compare successive photo models. Like if we go back next year and take a photo model, or in 10 years' time, we can use programs, or computer programs, to compare the differences in the models, which allows us to understand how a site is degrading or deteriorating over time.
Resolution 3D models like Ben just described by using an exceptional camera system and really powerful software called VSLAM. And this camera system, the Voyas camera system, was actually used to document the Endurance, Shackleton's vessel, that shipwreck. So what's really powerful about this is we are actually able to generate a point cloud at, like you're seeing on your screen here, in real time. So the Voyas camera system collects all of this beautiful imagery. And then on the right side of the screen, you can see a point cloud being generated. And what that point cloud does is shows us our coverage of the shipwreck. So if we see a gap in the point cloud, we know that we need to swim Rhodey over there to collect more imagery to fill in that gap. And that allows us to have a really complete 3D model at the end of this process. And what's so awesome is that we've been able to conduct all of these surveys with a brand new vehicle, Marley.
I know. It's been so cool to take Rhodey on its maiden voyage and see it in action for the first time. And I've worked with a lot of teams on a lot of different vessels. It's always really exciting to bring new technology on board, but it doesn't always work exactly the way you want it to. So I've just been really impressed with how reliable Rhodey has been throughout this expedition. It's just really amazing to see it getting in the water and doing its thing all day, every day. We've been able to capture some really, really beautiful footage. And I have to say, personally, being a videographer, it is just so cool to see the footage that we've been able to get with Rhodey. It's just absolutely stunning. So I think we have some of that to look at here.
This is actually one of our 3D models that we generate after the point cloud. So we collect our footage, the point cloud's generated in real time, but that point cloud is not our 3D model. We take that data, we process it, and we create these really high resolution models that our scientists can then study for years and years to come, which is really such a powerful tool.
Yeah. And skilled ROV pilots make this whole process look easy.
Yeah.
And our team is just such a well-oiled machine. But there definitely have been a couple of challenges. Holly, do you want to tell us about one of the issues that our team has had to work through this week?
Yes, this challenge has actually become somewhat of a running joke amongst the team here. We added 4 LED carbon fiber light mounts onto Rhodey, and these extend pretty far out from Rhodey's little frame. So you think when you're driving the robot, they're out pretty wide from our body. You can see it right here. Yes, this is a great picture to show these light arms. Well, in the construction of these, there is a failure point, and that failure point is meant to break before the entire arm does. So it's a really important piece of the part. However, it's a little more delicate than we would like it to be.
Pretty sensitive, yeah.
We found that even just a gentle nudge on this light arm can cause that failure point to activate. But thankfully, we have some really smart people on board, as well as a 3D printer, and our team was able to augment that part with some 3D printed pieces. But every time the vehicle's recovered and one of the light arms is just kind of like hanging really sadly, we're like, well, that we know it was a successful dive.
Yeah, having a 3D printer on board is pretty crucial, pretty clutch for this type of expedition, especially, using brand new equipment for the first time. And as we've talked about, Holly, I've been on over 24 different research expeditions on several different vessels. And honestly, this is just part of the deal. Stuff breaks, things, certain parts have to be replaced or fixed. And I think, that's just part of what you sign up for when you go to work on a boat. In this situation, you don't have the luxury of being able to drive down the street to Home Depot to buy a replacement part. You have to fix it or sometimes even fabricate it yourself on the ship. And I think a big part of what is, just important when we're thinking about things going wrong or having challenges or having problems to overcome is really about having the right mentality.
Absolutely.
And approaching these different issues with a problem-solving mindset. I was actually working on a research vessel a couple of years ago, and I interviewed one of our chief engineers, and I asked him, tell me about the mentality that you have when you approach a problem. And he said, well, first of all, we don't consider it a problem. We consider it to be part of the job, and we just look at it as a challenge. And that proactive, positive mentality is really, really crucial.
I love that piece of advice. And I think our entire team out here absolutely has that mindset. And that's what has allowed us to get out of quite a few jams. I mean, just like you said, things break when you're on a ship, and we don't have Home Depot. So everybody is just really creative, and it has great ingenuity to really overcome these challenges, not problems.
Yeah. Stay calm. Don't panic. Work the issue. Figure it out.
Yeah.
That's just a big part of it.
And this creative problem solving has not only helped us out here while we've been on the lake, but I think it's created this really beautiful evolution in exploration. Uh, Exploration today looks really different than it did 20 or even 10 years ago. The technology that is enabling us to be in your living room today or at work on your lunch break, how you're watching us, allows us to bring remote scientists in. So they're not on the vessel with us, but they can watch the video streams. They can see the data that we're collecting, and they're actually able to participate in the expedition. And that remote participation has provided us with some really invaluable insights, as far as we need to drive Rhodey a little closer and take a look at this one aspect of a shipwreck, because that's going to be really important for our team to be able to identify this in the future. And something that I think is really cool, even more so than the remote scientist participation, this morning we actually had a remote ROV pilot join us and fly Rhodey for our first dive of the day. The remote pilot was located in Rhode Island, the University of Rhode Island, and we are here in Lake Ontario. And this progression of remote operations and teleoperations is something that's really important as we continue to evolve ocean and lake or just marine exploration. We're really proud to have incorporated that into this expedition.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see that. Again, having worked on so many different vessels and so many different research projects, I've only seen the remote piloting happen successfully a couple of times, just a handful of times. And it really is the future. I think, 10, as you just said, Holly, 10, 20 years ago, exploration looked so different.
Mm-hmm.
It's also going to look really, really different another 10 or 20 years from now. And I think
Absolutely.
a big marker of that difference where we're going to see a massive increase in remote piloting. So somebody can pilot an ROV or another vehicle from hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. And that just opens up all kinds of opportunities. So that's really exciting to see that, to see people being able to be a part of this expedition, even if they're not on the ship with us.
Yeah, it's also really important for 24-hour operations, Marley. Life out here on the research vessel can get a little challenging when you're awake for 12 hours a day, working 7 days a week. Having the ability to have a remote pilot joining us so that our pilots on the ship can get a break is really important. And also right now, we are in the middle of seeing the new regional class research vessels being constructed. And these vessels are going to be vital to continuing ocean exploration, but something about them that's different than our current fleet of research vessels is they have fewer berths or bunks for people to sleep in. So that remote participation and the remote operations aspect becomes even more important once those vessels come online.
Yeah, I'm really glad we've been able to incorporate that as part of our expedition. And so at this point, we are just 2 days away from finishing our expedition. We've already been out here for close to 2 weeks, but our work is not done. Once we get back to port in Oswego, the expedition goals and objectives are not complete. This is really just the beginning. So the OECI team will return home to Rhode Island, and there they will be hard at work with creating all of the 3D models. So the point cloud generation we see happening in real time out here, but the process of actually, getting the full construction of the 3D model takes a little longer. Meanwhile, our maritime archaeologists are going to spend hundreds and hundreds of hours reviewing and very closely examining all of the video footage that we've captured, because they're basically hunting for clues within the footage of what and where to find artifacts within these vessels that could help them glean information about the exact identity of some of these wrecks. We do have, I have in my footage unidentified wreck number 1, unidentified wreck number 2. We have a couple that need to get specific identifications. So that's really exciting. And then I will also be very busy managing multiple files of video and photos. I've conducted several interviews with members of our team. So I will be editing and producing a bunch of content from this expedition. We have just had some incredible moments, really beautiful stories that have come out of this. And I'm excited to edit and produce all of those over the next few weeks and months. And Holly, if people want to see some of the content, some of the stories from our expedition, where can they go?
That is a great question, Marley. If you all would like to continue keeping up with the expedition, even after it's finished, you all can find that information and content on the Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary Facebook page. They're going to continue to post imagery from the ROV dives, fun stories that have happened and taken place on the vessel over the past 2 weeks. So follow that Facebook page and you can keep up with the expedition even though we're back on land. One funny thing, Marley, about the 3D model generation taking a little bit of time. Before this live stream, I approached one of our team members and asked for one of the 3D models. And he said, sure, can I get that to you tomorrow morning? Because they started running the model last night, but it just takes a long time to process all of this data. So it can take more than 24 hours sometimes to generate these,
we're talking about some very, very large files.
Yeah. But as far as what's next for Rhodey, our mighty little ROV is actually going to get a few upgrades. We have the opportunity to add a 5-function and 7-function manipulator arm set to Rhodey, and that would improve his sampling capability for future expeditions. So that's really exciting, and we can't wait for that to happen. Rhodey has a upcoming project in the Gulf of Maine that the OECI team will be working on. And we're also excited to explore possibilities outside of research. Rhodey has such a small footprint. We brought all of our kit and equipment up here in a Sprinter van, which for regular ROVs that are larger than the size of a Sprinter van, that's pretty impressive. So that footprint allows us to have really quick mobilization, and we want to make connections throughout New England to utilize Rhodey for emergency response. Should things happen in the waters around New England, we would be able to go down and check out infrastructure if needed, or anything else that could pop up, we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I loved when you first introduced Rhodey's name, that it's for Rhodey for the University of Rhode Island and the Rhodey Rams, but it's also an instrument that can easily mobilize and take it on a road trip and go. So
Very fitting.
It is really exciting. I'm excited to look back years from now after Rhodey has done multiple expeditions, multiple projects, or maybe even some emergency response work, and to look back and think, man, I remember when Rhodey was brand new and it was on its, very, very first expedition, and being able to be a part of that has been really, really special. So as we've said, this expedition has just really been a phenomenal experience for all of us on board, and for many people who have been able to join us remotely as well. I think that our team has really clearly demonstrated that we have the right tools and the right approach for doing this really unique work. And we've also really enjoyed our time on the RV Lake Guardian, which is owned and operated by the EPA. We're excited about the potential to collaborate with the EPA and with the Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary in the future. So hopefully we'll be back out here to document more shipwrecks in the coming years.
That is exactly what we're all hoping for, Marley. This has been such a great experience, but none of this work would have been possible if it weren't for the Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary, NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, the Ocean Exploration Cooperative Institute, or OECI, the University of Rhode Island for letting us use Rhodey, and the Lake Guardian. This vessel, we wouldn't have been able to do any of this work without this vessel. But Marley and I want to give a special thank you to the people behind the scenes, making us look good and pulling up all of our media, making sure everything runs smoothly. And we can thank the Inner Space Center at the University of Rhode Island for that. It's been such a joy to work with them, and we wouldn't look as good as we do if it weren't for them.
You guys rock. We appreciate you.
I think we have a few questions in the chat we can answer, Marley.
It looks like it. Yeah, it looks like we've got some friends tuning in, some shipmates tuning in. So cool.
So we have one question. What's the name of the ROV pilot from Rhode Island? We have Jake Bonney, who is a very experienced ROV pilot, joining us from the University of Rhode Island. And we're really fortunate to have his skill and that we can utilize his skill during this expedition.
Yeah, Jake is awesome. Sailed with him many times. Happy to have him join us today.
Okay, let's see. What else do we have?
Looks like we got a question about airplanes. That is a great question. I didn't know until we got up here and started talking to some locals here in Oswego that there has been at least one plane crash in Lake Ontario. So I don't know much about it, but there is a plane out here.
There is, and unfortunately, we have not found it. Our mapping crew, we map every night. So we're covering different areas of the lake. That's something that we have yet to find, but we still have 2 days left.
Well, we were talking about how a plane crash can be a little more difficult to find because, so many of these shipwrecks that we found look almost completely intact.
Yeah.
It's like they were just on the surface and then they sank to the bottom, and maybe a mast has blown over or maybe it hasn't. A lot of things still have its rigging and mast in place. So they're pretty easy to spot with our mapping system. But an airplane, if it's crashing out of the sky, a lot of times planes will shatter when they hit the water, break apart. So wreckage can float and drift. And it's very rare that you find an airplane fully intact at the bottom of the lake in the way that you would find a shipwreck. So great question, but we have not seen any planes.
How many wrecks? Oh, we've got one on the screen. Oh, that's just a nice comment.
Thank you, Connor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Will Rhodey be specifically for the Great Lakes? That's a great question. Rhodey is owned by the University of Rhode Island. So Rhodey won't be used specifically in the Great Lakes, but I'm sure our whole team would be so happy to come back here and do work in the future in the Great Lakes.
It sounds like you guys are envisioning having Rhodey as kind of a regional resource from what you were describing around New England, around this part of the country. Different institutions or organizations could potentially utilize Rhodey in different ways.
That is definitely our hope. And another really cool aspect about Rhodey that we are hoping to implement, we have a lot of students on board with us, and they're learning how to pilot Rhodey out while we're out here on the lake. It's been really phenomenal to watch. But a lot of times to get piloting experience, you have to be on a research vessel in the middle of the ocean. But with Rhodey, we can bring that piloting training to our university and provide that to our students. So that's another one of the services we're hoping to provide.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. We've got so many great questions, y'all. Thank you. Yeah. How many wrecks have you documented to date? How many wrecks have we done?
12 as of this morning. And I think we are in the studio right now, so I don't know what's going on at the ROV piloting station, but I do think we are on our 13th wreck right now as we speak.
That's just, again, so amazing. I really thought putting 14 shipwrecks on our 2-week expedition timeline was just incredibly overly ambitious. And here we are making it happen.
Oh, and that's one of the benefits of Rhodey, Marley, is how quickly we can document these things. With a team of divers, a team of really skilled divers, it could take more than 5 days to document one wreck. And we are able to, yesterday we completed 4 dives. So
in one day.
In
that is
one
wild.
day.
Yeah.
We're really systematic. We've all got into a really great rhythm. And so that's allowed us to move pretty quickly through a lot of these sites. And that time saving factor is a great advantage.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we've got a great question from my good friend and shipmate Emily Jones. Wants to know what types of mussels are on the wreck, and what mussels we've seen on the wreck so far. So I've heard both zebra mussels and quagga mussels. Is that accurate?
I think they're zebra mussels.
Someone in the chat the other day said they were quagga mussels. I don't know if this is up for debate or
Listen,
not.
I'm a geologist. I study rocks, okay? I am not a mussels expert, and we have heard quite a few different things. So don't take my word for it. Actually, we have heard both zebra and quagga mussels.
Yeah, I should have fact checked that before we got online, but it has been really cool to see just pretty much entire full coverage of, on most of
Mhm.
these wrecks, you can't even hardly see the wood because they're so covered in mussels.
Yeah.
It's pretty fascinating.
It actually gives the wrecks a really creepy, like spooky feeling as the ROV approaches them to see them covered in mussels. It is like you're seeing something frozen in time, but something that's kind of ghostly too.
That's exactly what we're seeing.
Yes.
A ghostly, eerie thing that is frozen in time.
Well, were you able to document the St. Peter? So we, I think the St. Peter is one of the most well documented shipwrecks within the sanctuary. So there wasn't really a need for us to go back to the St. Peter.
Yep, I would channel our chief scientist, Ben Yose, here and say that the St. Peter has been really well documented, really well mapped. He said that they do not want any more imagery of the St. Peter. They have so much. So it was really about getting to wrecks that are much deeper.
Yeah.
I believe obviously the St. Peter is diveable.
They dove to collect the footage on the St. Peter.
So we were really targeting wrecks that aren't accessible to most scuba divers. A typical recreational scuba diver can only go to about 120 feet. A lot of the wrecks that we've been going to are over 200, 300, sometimes even much deeper. So
yeah, that's another reason why Rhodey was perfect for this.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Not to mention how much more efficient and quick Rhodey can make these maps and imagery happen compared to humans.
Emily has given us another great question. Are the 3D renders made from the mapping technology? Emily, the point cloud is generated by the Voyis camera system, but we actually generate our 3D models in reality capture. So it's a different software.
Excellent nerd question. What is the deepest wreck the team has documented? I remember the depth was a little over 600 feet.
Yeah, it was slightly above 600 feet was the deepest
But that is one of the wrecks that we don't have a confirmed identity on yet.
Correct. That is the wreck that we shared during our previous Wednesday live stream. So if you're interested in seeing that footage, go to the link in the caption and you can rewatch that live dive footage. But that has been our deepest wreck so far.
I would definitely encourage any of you tuning in right now to check that out because there was some just amazing footage during that dive.
And some really great conversations too. We had a rotating kind of cast of scientists that joined us to talk about their area of expertise, what we were looking at. It was just a great program.
Yeah, definitely. Holly, I have a question for you.
Okay.
What has been your favorite part of this expedition? I know that's a tough question because we've crammed a lot of epic stuff into this short time that we've been out here. But I guess I'm thinking about this because I was just interviewing Jason, our expedition leader, earlier this morning, and it got me thinking about what's your favorite thing about doing this, being out here?
That's a great question. And we are doing some really epic stuff. Like it's really, really cool. But I think, honestly, Marley, my favorite thing about being on a research vessel is the people. Like I didn't know Marley before this week, and I think we're going to be friends for life. So getting to know your shipmates so well, and something that Marley and I have talked about a few times, and I know that you enjoy this, is seeing everybody's reaction to the things that we're doing and being able to connect and have this shared experience of seeing these shipwrecks together for the first time. Yeah. So for me, it's about the people.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry.
That's what I always say. It's not about where you are, it's about who you're with. And we have been with a really phenomenal team out here. Just so many really, really, really smart people. And yeah, just a really incredible experience.
We are so grateful for everyone that's followed along during this expedition. We're really happy that we've been able to share so much with the public, and we've also been connecting with classrooms behind the scenes. But we're really grateful for your time. We're so happy to share what we've been doing with you. Marley, besides the people, what's your favorite part of this?
Well, this is the first time I've done an expedition specifically centered around shipwrecks. Every other expedition I've done has been either geological, like deep sea submarine volcanism, deep sea corals, biology, and all of that is fascinating. But I've really enjoyed kind of just leaning into the archaeological part of this and learning so much. I've never learned as much history during an expedition as I have during this one. So that's just been really different and fascinating. It's also really made me have some existential thoughts about time. And I know you and Jason and I had a conversation the other night about just how this reorients how you think about time. What life was like 200 years ago. I mean, we can clearly see in some of the things we find on these shipwrecks what was important to people in their daily lives 200 years ago. And then it makes you think about what will we find, or what we won't find it, but whoever is alive 200 years from now, what will they find from our daily lives that they think is fascinating and wanting to uncover?
It provides a very unique perspective, that's for sure.
Yeah, I like it when an expedition makes me think in a totally new way.
It's just an awesome thing to be a part of. We have one final question from Ross. Any details on the specifics of the camera? We are using the Voyis Discovery stereo camera system. It is
good job on memorizing the full name.
It's a great piece of kit, honestly. That's our ROV dive cam in this image right here, but right below that is where our Voyis camera system sets. And one of my favorite features is that when you take the cover off, it kind of looks like Wally's eyes, the little Disney robot character. So apart from looking really cute, it's also a really powerful camera, and that's what's allowed us to document these shipwrecks in 4K footage with this really high resolution, and we'll be able to create these really high resolution 3D models because of this camera system.
We're gonna have just so much content from this expedition. It's really kind of mind-boggling to think about just how many things we're going to be able to produce from this. But that's also a big part of our goal with this. You know, we're doing this work for the Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary and to help them pinpoint exactly where all of these wrecks are, because these are considered incredibly important cultural, historical heritage, just a really integral part of why and how this part of Lake Ontario is a sanctuary, is to protect these wrecks.
Absolutely. And this baseline information will help protect and preserve these artifacts on the bottom of the seafloor. And I know the Small But Mighty team at NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries are working really, really hard to make sure that all of these wrecks are protected, preserved, and the ones that can be accessed will be properly buoyed so the public can come out and enjoy these things as well.
And they'll also be able to enjoy and learn from them in all of the 3D models and all of the other educational content that we'll be producing and making available to the public. We just had another question on that front about sharing the 3D models. Will that be on the sanctuary site? And yeah, I think a lot of our stuff will be on the Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary's site, as well as their Facebook page.
The 3D models specifically, so all data that is produced by NOAA goes to a database called NCEI. It's the National something. I don't remember the acronym, but NCEI. And so all of the data collected from this expedition will eventually end up on that database. So the 3D models will be publicly available. Most of them will likely be displayed on the sanctuary's website, but people would be able to download and use those for themselves as well.
Yeah. It's cool to 3D print one of the 3D models too. And
then
hold a shipwreck
really, really
in your
cool.
hand. That's always a great tool for classrooms.
Pretty fun.
yeah, museums and all kinds of places. It's just really, really cool to think about where and how this expedition will continue to reverberate in different areas and different locations.
Yes. All right, Marley. I think that does it for our
I think
last
so.
live stream.
Yeah, we got just a wonderful comment here. Thank you both for all you do for science. Thanks for spending time in our sanctuary and community. On to your next adventure. Thank you, Brian. That is an awesome comment. We really appreciate that.
Also, shout out to Connor for putting the correct acronym in the chat. Thank you. NCEI stands for National Center for Environmental Information.
Love a good acronym. Perfect.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think we, before we wrap up, we do have several people to thank.
Yes, this wouldn't be possible without the NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, OECI, University of Rhode Island, the EPA and the Lake Guardian, and the Inner Space Center. So thanks to everyone. Thanks to you all for joining us. We're going to miss connecting with you all, but you'll be able to keep up with everything on the Sanctuary's Facebook page. So
yeah, definitely follow Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary on Facebook. They're going to be putting out some awesome content. And thanks again for tuning in. We appreciate it.
We'll see you guys later.